more thorny issue, I think, when we look at forgiveness. And that is that so many times when people are trying to forgive, that search for peace so that regardless of what's happened to us, that we can move forward. Some of the things that we're trying obviously to recover from are traumatic events that have happened in our life or traumatic aspects to our life. So when we look at forgiveness and trauma, for instance, we have to be careful. For instance, when we take it trauma, let's split it in, that kind of into two areas. One, if we take the more classic sense of what we know that people continue to struggle after a traumatic event, that is that they might be diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. It means that because of an event that has happened, of a frightening reality, something like a car wreck or off to war, or watching something very violent occur to them, and they end up post-traumatic stress, we understand that that involves sometimes the reliving of that event, the being triggered by things in the present that take us back to those moments, and we're completely reliving that entire experience, being led there by a trigger to something that sounds familiar now and takes us back. What we're seeing much more often now these days, though, is what we've characterized as complex PTSD, and that is that the traumatic event may not be a single event like war or a car wreck, but the traumatic event might be something that has affected our ability, especially when we're younger, to be able to form secure bonds and connections with those that are going to keep us safe. And so we look at complex PTSD as almost like being a low-level cold or like walking pneumonia. It isn't necessarily as noticeable, but it is there and it affects on a regular basis. And so complex PTSD involves perhaps those that have been homeless or were raised by a mentally ill parent, or even alcoholism in a parent, or homelessness and insecurity and just ongoing chaos enough in our formative years that we're not able to really trust what is secure and what is not. The reason why we still call it complex PTSD is that all of the factors that surround post-traumatic stress, that is the suddenness of being triggered by something in the present that brings us to the past and has us relive it. With complex PTSD, there's still things that trigger us today that take us back to the past, but as opposed to having that completely relived, now with complex PTSD, it's more of an emotional flashback. We're having waves of emotion because of something that's occurring to us now that is really taking us back to the way we felt when things were insecure at home. An alcoholic parent coming home after a night of binging, another move in the middle of the night because dad has lost his job and we're running, those kind of things. All of those emotional things can be brought to the fore, can be brought to the present, and we relive it. The difference, though, with complex PTSD is that most people, especially until they understand what's going on, don't know why it is that they're reacting in the present. They just know that they're being flushed with feelings of loss or fear or anxiety or anger, and they're trying to pin it on something now rather than have that knowledge and ability to say, actually, this is tied to my past. And this isn't, I'm not really in danger now, but this thing that happened to me today is causing me to feel all the things that I felt when I was 7 or 8. And it infuses me in the amygdala of my brain can't tell the difference between then and now. And all it knows is that the primitive part of my brain is reacting, and it's throwing out the stress chemicals to fight or flight or run in the now. And until we understand this dynamic, we don't understand why it is that we're doing what we're doing. Trauma and complex PTSD has a much deeper, more transforming effect on people than we know. And when it's done at a low level like this, it is on a regular basis forming and altering our decision making and the way that we think and the way that we feel. We do things differently and don't know why. Therefore, we feel broken, or we feel upset, or and we may beat ourselves up. Now, along with that, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in a little while, but what comes with complex PTSD is the installation inside of us of an inner critic. It is that voice in our head. It is the constant reminder that says, don't risk, don't take chances, don't move, don't react, and be fearful. The world is an unsafe, unsecured, unpredictable place, and you have to be afraid of that. That's why it is, for instance, that so many people with complex PTSD, their three mottos end up being: don't talk, don't trust, don't feel. The world is dangerous, and we have to be protected from that. It's a very ongoing, damaging effect on our ego, but one that kind of slides underneath the surface enough, again, until people understand what it is that they're dealing with. They just assume that they're broken. They just assume that they're messed up. And because of that, it affects dramatically their ability to be able to live life